Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to the Joint Committee of Stratford-on-Avon and Warwick District Councils. Welcome in particular to colleagues and councillors from Warwick District, to Elizabeth House, and to anyone joining us virtually, and to the press. Just before we start, some housekeeping. If the fire alarm does sound, it's not a test. We'd need to go out the front of the building to the car park opposite. So, without further ado, item 1 on the agenda is appointment of a chair. Can I have any nominations, please? Is that a nomination or second, Ian?
That's a second, Dean.
Second, thank you. Any other nominations? No, on that basis, welcome Councillor Junior to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Welcome to this meeting of the Joint Cabinet Committee. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to consider a report that lays out evidence, local plan evidence, that will inform the preparation of the South Warwickshire local plan with respect to a particular section of the report. But before we do that, we have to look at a few other things that we have to do. One of them is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, good evening, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Wally Hoggins, Passingham, Fulp and Milton. And
then we have disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest for tonight? And the next one is the minutes of the previous meeting. I have to seek confirmation and permission to sign the minutes of the last meeting that was held on the 1st of August 2024. Are happy to confirm those minutes if you've had a chance to have a look at them? Then moving on to the substance of tonight's business, and that is the endorsement of the report to consider and whether or not to endorse the South Warwickshire Local Plan, Gypsy Traveller, Travelling Show People and Boat Dwellers Accommodation Assessment Study that was put together in September. One of the we might start with, I don't know whether we want any background information from anybody at all, or whether you want to just proceed to questions. What would you prefer to do? Does anybody want to ask for any detail? Have you had chance to look at the report in full? And you're quite happy with the content of that report? Have you got any questions that you want to raise as a result of that report? Yes, Councillor Day.
Chair, thank you. I do think members and possibly members of the viewing public would appreciate just the officers giving this report a little introduction. Okay. It is such an important matter and a real, if you like, cornerstone of the new local plan.
I was kind of angling for that kind of thing if anybody wanted it. Yes, well, would any officer like to be able to just give us the background and why the report was brought together and what the report actually tells us?
Thank you. My name's Tony Ward from Warwick District Council. Just a brief overview of what we've got before us this evening. As part of our endeavours to bring forward a new local plan, we're required to answer the overall housing question. And as a part of that overall question, the NPPF and Planning Policy for Traveller Sites, other government guidance, gives us explicit information requiring us to look at the question of accommodation for gypsies and travellers, travelling show people, and not through those particular documents, but through Planning and Housing Act in 2016, I believe, we're also required, where it's relevant, and it is to our district, to look at the accommodation needs of boat dwellers on our inland waterways. So we appointed consultants to deliver this specialist report for us. They're experts in this particular field, and we've worked with them, and we've now arrived at the document you see before us. Fundamentally, it sets out the overall requirements for gypsy and travellers in terms of what they call pitches, for individual pitches, over the forthcoming planned period. And in doing so, there are two particular definitions that are set out. One is set out in the PPTS document, and another which is sort of an industry standard, which looks at what is called the ethnic identity definition, which is slightly broader and gives a slightly higher overall figure. And we may want to discuss that in a little bit more detail later on. So it gives us the figures that we'll need to translate into policy and into sites, presumably, through the local plan process. The study also looks at the needs for travelling show people, and they require what they call plots on yards as opposed to pitches on sites, and it identifies the overall numbers for that purpose as well. And it gives us more detail that these plots, in this instance, are required to be a little bit larger to accommodate the machinery and things that, or the infrastructure that goes along with the lifestyle of travelling show people. With regard to the boat dwellers study, this has been a little bit more difficult to determine in terms of precise figures, but nevertheless, the consultants have gone and discussed this with the Canal and River Trust, with some of the families living on the waterways wherever possible, but it was deemed that the overall sample that they could engage with was not sufficient really. So using anecdotal evidence in discussion with various agencies, they've determined the number that they think is appropriate to provide new residential moorings over the planned period also. So they're all wound up into this document here. The recovering report sets out that we would like you to endorse that so that we can move forward to translating that into policy. One thing that I've just omitted to discuss actually with you to set out is that the document also looks at the needs for transient gypsy families, those that are moving across our area at certain periods throughout the year, either visiting established gypsy families or just crossing across our territory, as it were, to move to other parts of the country when they set down for a few days. So it sets out a proposal that we should look very carefully at adopting what is called a negotiated stopping places policy to help these families to deal with them in situ wherever possible, and sign an agreement with them so that everybody knows what the parameters are and what to do and what's acceptable or otherwise, and to try and tolerate these people where it's safe to do so and where there'll be no disturbance caused as a consequence. So it also gives us some detail on that for us to take forward as well. So I think that gives you a brief summary, councillors, and we'll take it from there if that's okay.
Do I have any particular questions that anybody wants to raise? What we're considering are three different consultations in effect. Boat dwellers, travelling show people, pictures, plots, and pictures for gypsies and travellers. There are three different consultations, and there is and then there is a discussion of the definition and which definition should apply in this instant. So I don't know whether there's anything else you want to add or anything else you want to ask questions about. Anybody? Councillor Rock.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not in the Cabinet. I'm Joint Chair of the South Warwickshire Local Plan Advisory Group. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Having read through the report, it was very comprehensive, so forgive me if I'm asking a question that is already on there. But it seems to me the overall numbers seem to have reduced from what they have been that I've previously understood, certainly for Stratford District, that we've talked about before. So presumably this is because it's more updated and has been gone through more accurately than it has been before? That's the sort of first question. Secondly, we have rather a lot of canals in both districts. And when we talk about provision for canal dwellers, presumably that is actually moorings on the linear canals, is it, or is it within basins? It talks about houseboats and the likes here. So, you know, presumably they have to have licenses to be moored on the canal. So it's a very specific set of requirements that have to be met. So those are my two questions really.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm still on that. Thank you for that. Yeah, the Stratford number's decreasing. I believe your last study was done in 2019. Since then, it is itemised actually in the document. Some plots have become available on sites already in existence in Stratford that has eaten into the overall requirement going forwards, as it were. And of course, time moves on, and the families, they've been out and they've been surveyed by the consultants, and their individual circumstances may have changed also. But that fundamentally explains the decrease there, is that some pitches have become available in the intervening period, and also the families' makeups and whatever may have changed subtly as well over time.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry, I haven't moved on to the second part as well. With regard to the boat dwellers, we're looking at anything that constitutes somebody's principal place of residence. So it embraces sort of moorings and houseboats as well, where they are prevalent.
Councillor Crump, you wanted to come in.
Thanks, Chair. We did speak quite a bit about this at scrutiny. Mr. Ward was a guest appearance there. I think I'll say the points now that are raised there. One was we need to make sure the evidence is robust. Obviously, we did speak about a little bit briefly about anecdotal evidence when it comes to boats, etc. But we're concerned that obviously we spent a significant amount of money on the process and the study, that it's robust enough to take any challenge. Obviously, we know that people do like to challenge council, so I think we did have some reassurance at OC that it was robust and it was up to date and would be up to date for a few years. I think that was one of the questions we asked, and I'll do another one in a minute, if that's okay.
Anybody want to answer that first question, and I'll go back to Councillor Crump afterwards.
Yes, as we said previously, as far as they go, this is as up to date as you can get. I mean, they do have a shelf life. All of our evidence-based reports all have a shelf life. They're normally 5 to 6 years before you seriously should be thinking about doing a refresh. So in as much as being robust, I think it's as good as you're going to get. Obviously, it'd be nice to give the officers the certainty to move forward, looking at the overall requirement in terms of pitches utilised in the ethnic definition. If you're satisfied, that's the way to go. The consultants have expressed that that's the most robust method you could utilise, because it not only encapsulates the need as prescribed in the PPTS, it looks a little bit beyond that, and it kind of protects us against any sort of loopholes or legal challenges that might come forward. It's a good way of embracing the total need of anybody who ethnically identifies as a gypsy and traveller. So yes, it's as good as you're going to get. I take on board what you said about there has been some reference to anecdotal evidence with regard to the waterways and the movement of boats and houseboats, etc., on the waterways, but it was a particularly difficult area for the survey work to be undertaken, because a lot of these families are moving around because they can only stay on permanent residential moorings for a certain amount of time. I think the dialogue in that particular instance will continue between the councils, the providers of moorings, and the Canal and River Trust. So that one will continue, I think.
Councillor Crump, did you want to come
Yeah, I
back
think
on
that
that?
leads on to the second point quite nicely, actually, about transient. And I think I like the approach, particularly about the temporary sites and the transient and visiting gypsies and traveller encampments. And I think that's whether that was a shortfall in the past, and I think it's positive that it's been addressed. So I think that links in with the transient approach of the boat people or boat accommodation people. I'm not sure of the right terminology there, but I think you'll know where I'm going.
Boat dwellers, I believe.
And so I think, again, that is positive. And I think, as you say, I think in 2.6, there probably will be some liaison required with the key stakeholders at the county, the police, and perhaps other authorities as well. So see whether there will be a county-wide approach and whether that can be some synergy and get some benefits from that as well. I think that's quite important.
Absolutely, I totally agree that there'll be benefits to be had if we can look at this in a more unified way with other agencies, the police and the county council up front, as well as other authorities on our borders. So there may be a joint way forward, but we will look at that, yes.
Councillor Day.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Ward, thank you for that moving on, because it actually flows nicely. The importance of working with the police seems pretty paramount to me. I mean, we have in Warwick District quite a number almost every year of unwelcome visits to private and public land by transient gypsy and traveller families. And the police have difficulty acting because there isn't a suitable transit site for them to use. So could you just explain a little more about what it takes to get agreement and from the stakeholders? Who would we be consulting with? Will we be consulting with representatives from the gypsy and traveller communities about where those transit sites might be, what they require? I mean, what's involved in getting that established? Because that affects all residents, not just those from this particular communities.
Yeah, I think there's a slight cross-purpose here, because the overall overriding recommendation of the document is to look at negotiated stopping policy, which isn't the use of formal transit sites. It's more of an ad hoc basis. If a family is crossing our area and they settle, for instance, on a piece of highway verge, our officers go out, assess that particular circumstance, and they're all going to be different, and see if it's safe, see if there's going to be any instances of nuisance to any surrounding occupants or people in the nearby vicinity, and see if it could be tolerated, basically, for a few days, a short period, and the family in question or the individual in question sign an agreement with us. I mean, we'll have to set out these agreements, and we will consult with the police, etc., to make sure everybody's happy how they're set out, how they're couched, to try and deal with them more in situ instead of going straight in there and moving people on. Because basically what you're doing there is you're moving the problem on to somewhere else in your own district or into a neighbouring authority. It's seen as a more humane way of dealing with it. It won't work in every instance. It depends on the site characteristics. But the overall, the emphasis is that we try and help them, look after their needs for a few days. We may even provide them with a wheelie bin or something to ensure that things are kept tidy. Things of that nature, to work collaboratively with the families. And in doing so, a lot of these families are moving around, doing like a circuit almost, around the Midlands, around the country, in wider areas. And over time, you build up more of a feeling of a relationship with them and more of a feeling of trust. And hopefully you would cut down then on the instances of where things go wrong and when there's conflict. So it's a long game, really, but that's the emphasis there. But the report also says we could, if we wish to, and it suggests that we do this in parallel with negotiating stopping policy, look at the provision of a couple of small transit sites, more formal transit sites, as a backup position. Now, whether we want to do that remains to be seen yet, because there's expense incurred with that, and sometimes the families don't want to move onto them anyway. You can't force them onto them, and they will just move off. So there's some more research to be done into that question.
Before I move on to the others, Councillor Day, did you want to come back on that point? Because then I've got Councillor Coucher and Councillor King who want to come in as well.
It is supplementary to my original question, and briefly, Chair, thank you. Mr. Ward, my concern is that not all of these community families settle on verges. Some of them arrive on the playing green in the middle of my village, if they can, most summers, which causes enormous disturbance. And the police are curtailed in the way in which they can respond or encourage them to move elsewhere, because we do not have alternate transit provision. So my question really pertains to, are we going to engage the police so that wherever we settle on possible fallback transit sites, the police will use their powers, or will be able to use their powers to enable them to leave, the Meadow and Bishop's Tatchbrook, if you see my point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. In future, when we're dealing with these instances, we will have to work very, very closely with those authorities, yes.
Councillor Coucher.
I think it's really important that clearly the South Warwickshire Local Plan is going to be a very robust document. This tends to be a very emotive matter, and we have already, as Councillor Day has said, we have informal travellers that come through, but we also have people who are trying to circumvent planning policy as well, but by just using the land. And I think we have a number of instances of that type in Stratford district. And I think what we need to have going forward is a robust plan that we can rely on. So clearly we need to consult, we need to make sure we've got the evidence there, but at the end of the day, we have to ensure that this is a plan that's going to endure and that we can work in accordance with, and that will therefore give confidence, I think, to many of our rural parishes who get concerned about this particular matter.
Okay, Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question really for a bit more context. Do you have any idea whether nationally these three categories numbers are moving? Do we see increased numbers or decreasing numbers in either of these categories? Do you know? Just thinking ahead of what might be coming down the line.
Overall figures?
Yes. Are there any trends which are becoming visible in terms of numbers?
No, I can't really answer that. No, we haven't looked into that at that scale.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rock, do you want to come in at this stage?
It's a supplementary to Councillor Day's question, which I'd just like to understand the answer he was given about the transit sites. It sounded like from that answer that that's a fundamental shift from previous years, where our objective was to establish one or two formal transit sites with facilities and all the rest of it in a convenient position, or an appropriate position. Now, what we're saying is we're going to primarily enter a negotiated site when a family moves into a particular location, and provide them with short-term facilities such as wheelie bins and so on. That sounds to be our primary route of doing that. And then see if we can provide some formal transit places. That sounds like a shift in what we have attempted to do before. That's the first question. The second question, has that approach been used successfully elsewhere and found to be favourable?
Yeah, yes, it has. Yeah, there are instances around the country where they've adopted this process of moving to negotiated stopping places policy, and it has been seen to be working. Obviously, the recommendation that's in the report is the consultant's sort of preferred option, for want of a better phrase, is what they recommend that we move to explore and move towards, because it can save the authority. In the long run, it can save money if it's instigated properly, rather than ploughing money into formal sites. You've got to find the site, which can be contentious. You've got to pay for its upkeep going forwards and manage it, and you've also got to set it up. And you can't always guarantee that these families will move on to them. It's a relatively new way forward of dealing with this issue, but it has been made to work around other parts of the country. Notwithstanding that, this is the recommendation of the report. If the councils and the councillors wish to move to an alternative strategy, this isn't dyed in the wool, as it were. This is the recommendation of this report at this point in time.
Yes, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I think, yeah, just to confirm Mr Wood's response there and to answer Councillor Rock's question directly, I think it is a shift, and I think it reflects practice from elsewhere that I think for the reasons Mr Wood's given, transit sites don't always work. So I think a temporary stopping place is a more flexible approach of dealing with, if you like, transient families who do come in for a very short time and then move on. So I think we're just trying to follow best practice and see what works. But I think we will see what works most appropriately for the district. Ultimately, it's about housing and accommodating these families. We do need to make sure we've got the right permanent provision, but we also need to make sure that there's that transient to allow families to move through the district. But yes, you're right, Councillor. It is a slight change in approach, reflecting, as I said, and Mr Ward said, how it's moved. I think nationally, really.
It's worth looking at the ES3, where it did say the research drew on a number of data sources, including what had been done elsewhere in the country, and also the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities report on trends. And so it has actually taken on board quite a lot of other reports that have been produced across the country by the sound of it. That's what the report says anyway. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think just to clarify for the benefit of joint cabinet members here present, I mean, this is a really important baseline document. There's an enormous amount of work gone into it, and I recognise that. I'm grateful to Mr Ward for his summary tonight. But I do think we need to recognise that we have suffered from times, or our communities have, with gypsy and traveller visits that have not been welcome on space that has otherwise prevented football teams from playing and has caused enormous amounts of disruption in our communities. So this baseline is important to help us support the best behaviour, to be more flexible. I get that. That's really helpful, and it's good to see what other authorities are doing. But my question, for the benefit of Joint Cabinet, was really about also ensuring we work with the police so that we can effectively manage those who are not prepared to play by the rules, so that we can protect our communities as we would from any other disturbance of that sort. And I just would like that underscored, because that's a policy we'd have to take forward in working with the police.
Would you like to come and answer that, Mr Clark?
Yes, just a very short point. Well-made points, Councillor Day. Really just to say, obviously, as I hope you understand, the purpose of tonight is to endorse this as an independent piece of research. We're not looking here to set either the policy of both councils for how we deal with gypsy and traveller developments in the district, nor indeed how we develop the policy in the local plan. That will be for another meeting. I mean, the fourth recommendation specifically asks that we note the policy-related recommendations, and I think all of the comments that are made are helpful for feeding into that debate, which will see the light of day with a preferred option draft shortly.
I'll bring Councillor Williams in at this point, and then I'll just note one of the recommendations.
Yeah, I'm just saying I think this is a helpful discussion, but I read this as a very pragmatic piece of pre-policy. And it does refer to suitable pieces of ground. It does refer to where there's no danger, there's no nuisance cause. It's a mixed model where it talks about having 2 sites which are permanent transit sites for 8 to 10 with the negotiated policy. So I took this as actually providing us the opportunities to act in the best interest of the situation. And I was pleased to read it because I thought it set out a sensible and balanced approach.
And the recommendation is that it will be, this is a study that will be used as consideration in the determining of planning applications and appeals from the date of endorsement. That is one of the recommendations that we have to consider tonight. Have we got any other questions? If not, we have 4 recommendations before us. It's to look at the report, whether we accept the report as part of to inform the preparation of the South Warwickshire Local Plan. It's to look at the definition and whether or not that is what we are prepared to accept. To note that it will be used as a consideration, material consideration, as part of planning applications and appeals from going forward, and that the policy related recommendations will inform the preferred options version of the South Warwickshire Local Plan. So there will be further stages, there will be consultation on various things, but this is to make sure that we've got this ability to accept, have this discussed and incorporated into the South Warwickshire Local Plan, as I understand it. Okay, so those are the 4 recommendations that we have before us. What is the view of the councillors? Are you prepared to accept those recommendations? Could I have somebody who would propose it? Or are we just want to kind of Councillor propose it? Councillor Williams second it? And are you all happy to accept it? Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think that is... Yeah, so the next item on the agenda is the urgent business. Have we been informed of any urgent business for tonight?
No, Chair, no urgent business.
No. Okay, in which case the meeting is closed. Thank you.